about these and other events that we do. I'd like to thank you for coming out today. It's through your support of the Press Club that we are able to fund scholarships for young communications professionals. Got something else going on here. There's a silent auction for a Goodyear blimp ride that's out at the table. You can sign up for that if you want to. It's part of our fundraising. And for those of you who are into Twitter, we are at hashtag Akron Press today. So if you want to tweet, go ahead and do that. Also remind folks there'll be an opportunity to ask questions of Dr. Scarborough as part of this program. There should be white cards on your tables. You can fill those out. Someone will be around to collect them. I'd like to ask everyone to please silence your cell phones. You have them. She'll introduce our speaker and be handling his questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. With the exception of me asking the questions that you send on, I'm hoping this will be pretty much the last time you're going to hear from me. We expect with this full room that there are going to be a lot of questions from a lot of folks, and Dr. Scarborough has pretty much made this an open forum, so please take advantage of it. Dr. Scarborough became the president of the University of Akron, the 16th president, just about 16 months ago, and it's been a pretty busy 16 months since then. He came here following 2 years as provost of the University of Toledo and 7 years at the school altogether, including as executive director of medical school. Before that, he was executive vice president at DePaul University, and his PhD, MBA, and BBA all came from the University of Texas. As honeymoons go, this one may not have been the longest one. Dr. Scarborough initiated a series of budget cuts and program shifts, some of which have been celebrated, some of which have been lambasted. They include lower cost online courses, higher upper class fees, short-lived, the National Center for Choreography, the Corps of Cadets and Leadership Academy, startup companies supplying success coaches for incoming freshmen, the rebranding of the college as Ohio's Polytechnic University, full scholarships for as many as 2,300 kids via the LeBron James Foundation, and the list will go on. And it will go on, again, thanks to you, because Dr. Scarborough is going to speak briefly. He's also going to invite you to suggest the topics that we should be talking about this afternoon. So I'd ask you all to join me now in welcoming Dr. Scarborough.
Can you hear me okay? No. Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3. It's on. Test 1, 2, 3. Can you hear me yet? No. The light is on. Do we use this? Do we use this to make not kidding again? All right, great.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So let me begin by thanking the Akron Press Club for the opportunity to speak today. And I'd like to begin by recognizing its members. If you're a member of the Akron Press Club, could you raise your hand? Great. Okay. In addition to this group, if you work in the field of communications, could you raise your hand? All right, wonderful. So I want to begin by saying thank you for the work that you do to improve communication. I, more than anyone else in the world right now, understand how difficult your job is. Communication is hard work. I think in the 16 months that I have been president of the institution, I've given 4 major speeches. One was the investiture. The second was to heart-to-heart communications. The third had to do with the City Club speech in Cleveland. And the fourth was the university's State of the University address. And I would say that I had a lot of input, a lot of advice, and still communication was a challenge. In the end, people hear things that aren't intended. In the end, you have things that you should have said that you didn't say. So your work is hard work. It is professional work. And I want to begin by thanking all of you who work to help advance communication, to advance shared understanding, because shared understanding is so critical to making progress in the world today. And I think we'd all agree we need more shared understanding and progress in the world today. And you're instrumental to that. We generally do inside the university, with faculty, with staff, or students. in normal meetings with those groups. Because normally I would walk in and ask the question, okay, what do we need to talk about today? In the context of everything that we're doing at the university, in the context of everything going on in the world, what do we need to address today to move forward? And what I would normally do is write those topics on the whiteboard. And in the course of our time together, I would cover what I needed to cover. I'd provide the context within which to address all the issues. But we would allocate our time to make sure that we covered everyone's topic so everyone's prepared to move forward. So I want to try to do that today with you. I'd like to really do two things today. I'd like to begin by asking, what topics would you like for me to cover today? Many of you in this room have heard those four major speeches that have set the context for why change was necessary, that begin to outline the new initiatives that we've implemented at college, university, and kind of industry level. So you've heard all of that. What part needs greater clarification? What part needs addressing? With no topic off limit. What topic would you like for me to address today? And I'm going to record those topics on the whiteboard as I would do inside the university. After that, before I begin then to systematically address the topic, I'm going to provide 2 or 3 minutes of context, which I think are important to making sure one remembers and understands as I begin to then talk about each of these issues. Because these issues all are being addressed within the context of something larger. And I will simply remind you of what those are, because really that's what the four major speeches were about, to provide the context for the individual issues. Then when we're done with that, I think Schultze will collect your cards. Those will then form some type of a follow-up question opportunity until we're out of time today. Does that sound okay? So with that, I brought my markers. And I'd like to begin by simply asking, if you'll just raise your hand, what topics would you like to make sure? Yes, sir.
Setting the standards high for admission and academics, setting the bar high.
Okay. So I'm going to write this. I'm going to write admission standards, and I'll remember that you particularly want to talk about whether they should be higher. Right. Is that okay?
As well as academics, the actual.
Yeah. And then, okay, we'll write academics. Okay. In the back. Yes, ma'am.
The core mission of a university is education.
Okay.
How can you develop that without hiring tenured track faculty?
All right. Core mission. And the place of tenured faculty. Great question. What else? Yes, sir.
Graduate assistantships.
Okay. Graduate assistantships. Okay. Yes, yes, sir.
Relationship to the Board of Trustees.
All right. All right, good. Well, another hand. I'll get over here in just a minute. Was there another one here?
The grand entrance proposal.
Okay. Okay. Grand entrance. All right, you move this way, and then I'll come back. Yes, sir.
Rebranding.
All right, rebranding. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Both of you.
Administrative salaries.
Okay. Administrative salaries. Yeah.
I was going to say shared governance.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Shared governance. Moving this way, yes, in the back.
Infrastructure to support student success, especially at-risk students.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move this way. Getting hand over here, scanning, moving. Okay, hi Becky. Yeah.
How much money is leaving the Akron community
Okay.
Outsourcing, academic partnerships, Navigators,
Okay. All right.
Playhouse Square,
Okay.
food services.
Okay. You moving back? Yes, sir. In the back.
Current cost of higher education and long-term trends.
Okay. All right. We'll go back to the back. Yes, ma'am.
Community support in terms of financial contributions.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, yes, sir, in the back. I saw your hand. Okay, go ahead.
Elimination of debt for the students as well as the university.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
The emphasis on online education and also the international strategy.
All right. Okay, scanning back this way, yes, sir.
Real world experience in the department where faculty continue.
Okay. All right, where else? Anybody? Probably not to start with, right? And how long do I have before you're going to go to questions? All right. Okay, here we go. That's enough to get started. So here's the context within which I want you to simply recall, and it will take 30 seconds to remember the context. So these were kind of the key points from the four major speeches. We need to grow. Enrollment's a challenge. Persistently declined from 30,000 to 25 over a steady linear trend over the last 4 or 5 years. And we have put some financial challenges that we needed to address. We really can't afford to become predictably smaller. If we do nothing different, that's what will happen. To grow, what I've said is we need to become a national university. I'll talk about what that means. But to become a national university, we've got to be able to change some things. And change, as we know, is hard, especially when it affects, what we love to do each day. A necessary part of change is to embrace both success and failure. Teamwork is the key to success, internally and externally. There are many impediments to teamwork. Teamwork, like communication, is hard work. We have both the ability and the assets to become a national university, one that lifts the city and the region to higher ground, and we just have to have the courage to go there. The four major speeches really kind of set the stage for each of those bullet points. And most of the issues that are recorded on the whiteboard are attempts to kind of address this reality. So that was the 30-second reminder on the previous speeches. Probably to start with, this is kind of one of the issues that we have to deal with. The good news is, over the last 15 years, we rebuilt the main campus. It's beautiful. Those assets will serve this university for years. And we now are still competitive in terms of attracting traditional students to the main campus. That's the good news. We have assets to leverage. The bad news is we spent $650 million rebuilding the campus, and we still owe $500 million on that debt. Okay? And that's about, our mortgage payment each year is about 7.3% of our top line revenue. And that's pretty high. For universities like us, 5% would be considered high, 7.3 is really high, which means we can't continue to borrow money. We have to deal with our decreasing enrollment and address these financial challenges, and getting smaller is not an acceptable reality. So the budget cuts, the prioritizing certain activities, the creation of a new initiative fund for new initiatives are to address the financial challenges, and to embark on a set of new initiatives that will allow us to reverse the enrollment decline and continue the upward trajectory that the university has enjoyed. That is the context for which almost all of the issues on the whiteboard relate. Now, the debt on students is also an issue, but I will say this: when you look at the average debt of the student who graduates from a public university, it is still, unless they made a really bad major choice, an incredible return on investment. Okay? The lifetime earnings on for a college degree is still a tremendous, one of the best investments that you can make in life. Okay? And the other thing to keep in mind is, although the press and the politicians focus on what's happening to the sticker price, what's really most important is what's happening to the net price that students actually pay, not the price that's published on the website. Because the vast majority of students don't pay the sticker price. Most students, either through a merit scholarship or a need-based scholarship, are paying an amount, before they borrow $1 extra, they're paying an amount, a net tuition price, that is much, much lower than the sticker price. But parents see the sticker price on the websites, they become concerned. That shows up in public opinion polls and guide policy statements and policy decisions. But in reality, what we should be telling parents is, go talk to a financial aid counselor. Okay? They will make it possible for your son or your daughter to make it to school. In 2011, it went from being an open enrollment institution to a traditional enrollment institution, meaning we no longer accept students who don't score at least an HCT of 15, a 15 on the ACT, because they were failing at a 90% plus rate. So they were much better off probably starting with a community college, and even our own, than they were coming directly to the University of Akron. Because at least if they failed while incurring a small amount of debt relative to the larger amount they would at a four-year university. And then that was also reinforced by the state funding model change, where we now, 50% of our funding is based on who we graduate, not who we enroll. So every university likes to think about higher admissions standards, but a public university also has an obligation to give everyone a chance at the American dream. So there's always going to be a tug in both directions between serving students that have a reasonable chance and the students who come in at the highest levels of academic preparedness. So I say what the University of Akron really is a system of higher education. We are everything from a dual enrollment high school dual credit program to a community college in Orville, Ohio, all the way to a world-class polymer science and polymer engineering research college and institute of the highest caliber, okay? And everything in between. And as a great public university, that's great. Because I don't think you become great based on who you exclude. Okay? We only exclude those who don't have a reasonable chance of success. Everyone else, though, you're welcome. And we're going to work very hard to make sure that you're successful. Our core mission is, like most universities, teaching, research, and service. And this issue of tenured faculty is a very difficult issue for all universities across the country. In fact, the AUP, one of the unions that represents faculty, has data to show since the 1970s the percentage of tenured and tenure-track faculty are on a steady linear decline throughout this country. Okay? And there's a reason for that. It is primarily economic. That also tends to correlate with when state funding on a per-student basis began going down. So as more tenured faculty retired, and as states cut universities' budget, they replaced those more expensive tenured faculty with less expensive full-time and part-time non-tenured faculty. Why? Because the full-time and non-tenured faculty, not only did they have lower salaries, but they also were primarily focused on teaching the growing number of undergraduate students in this country. As more and more people were coming from the civil rights movement into colleges and universities, it became more acceptable, expected to go to college. There were now more students at the undergraduate level that needed to be taught, and those full-time lecturers, non-tenure track faculty were primarily focused on that population. So you were paying them less, they were teaching many more undergraduate students, so it became a way to balance the budget. The tenured and tenure track system, which is deeply embedded in our country since the early 1900s, is a system that does a great job of promoting scholarship and research in graduate education, which is critically important. And ideally, if you could have a tenured and tenure track faculty, if you can afford to have them also teach all the undergraduate courses, that's wonderful. It's just there's a high cost structure associated with that. So it's a funding issue. So that's the reason why there has been a steady linear decline, such that I may have the numbers a little off. If I had my slides, it would help. But nevertheless, if you look at the data, I'm going to say that in the 70s, probably 40% of faculty were in the tenured status. And that number's down to probably 25% today. So a steady linear decline. The question is, what's the critical mass below which you can't go? Or another question is can you make the tenure system more cost efficient so that you could both add more tenured faculty and balance the budget at the same time? But this is not only an issue at this university, don't let anyone lead you to believe that it is. It's a national issue. And we need to address it because it is very important. The graduate assistantships is an issue that's related somewhat to that, because in the name of growing the research function, what we've done is we've given permission to lots of programs to add graduate assistantships to their programs. Now, a graduate assistant, if you've not been one or not familiar with it, is a graduate student where you're waiving the tuition entirely, and you're paying that student a stipend to help support the department, the academic department, either through research assistance or teaching assistance. Okay, so it's a way of, so you're providing an education to the student. They're helping you almost as labor, paid labor, but you're waiving the tuition and paying them a stipend. And what's happening at institutions is we've done that at such a high rate that we're not collecting enough revenue to kind of fund the graduate programs. And so what we're looking at first is leave the doctoral programs alone. That's traditionally where graduate assistantships are most commonly found and used. Leave that traditional system alone. Look first at the non-academic departments, like the rec center, like the athletic department, like the student union, where graduate assistantships have been awarded just to get low-cost labor to support those departments. And we need to look at that just to make sure that there's not a better way, a more efficient way, a more cost-effective way to not only fund our graduate programs, but to staff those critical areas. So we will walk through a process at the graduate council level to try to find a systematic solution to that issue. The relationship to the board's responsibility. They're appointed by the governor, confirmed by the Senate. They hire the president. They approve the strategic plan. They approve the capital budgets, the major decisions for the university. And they're there to help set policy that moves the institution forward in a financially responsible way. That's really the fiduciary duty of a board. And the responsibility of the president is to work with the board, the administration is to work with the board to help give them the information they need to make those major decisions. Every board is very interested in the perspective of students and faculty and staff and alumni and other constituencies that care about the place. So they have a very difficult job to collectively kind of provide the strategic direction for the university. I've had a great relationship with our board. There are 2 empty seats on our board right now, so we're looking forward to Governor Kasich appointing them. 9 voting members, 2 non-voting student members. And our board also has 2 advisory non-voting members that currently are Sandra Pianalto, formerly the president of the Federal Reserve Bank in Cleveland, and who's our second? Oh yeah, Tony Alexander, the former CEO and chairman of First Energy. Those are our 2 advisory. So I have 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 bosses that I report to. The grand entrance was a part of a campus master planning exercise as we looked at how can we conceive of our beautiful campus continuing to evolve and to develop over time. One of the early observations is that we don't have kind of an obvious entry place the way that, say, Kent State or other universities do. So as we contemplate the build-out of our campus, the idea is, well, should we have a place of entry, an obvious place of entry into the university? Now, in terms of moving forward with any of these projects, there's three sources of capital funds that are typically used. One is state capital money that the state gives us that we can only use for capital purposes. That usually is only used for like IT infrastructure, utility systems, roofs, repairs of existing buildings. That's where they like that money to go. The other major source of capital funding is bonded indebtedness. You borrow money, just as you would. Problem with that, unlike the state money, you got to pay it back. So there's a limit to what you can borrow, but you have more freedom with what you can do with it. And a lot of those 22 new buildings over the last 15 years were done with bonded indebtedness. And then when you run the limits on both of those sources, it's philanthropy. Is there a donor who wants to give you money for a capital purpose? For example, the renovation of our law school will be funded in part through a donor gift from Phil Lloyd and his wonderful family. So that's an example of the three. If we were to ever do something like a new entrance to the university, more than likely it would be through donor funds or other discretionary funds, not state capital, and not likely bonded indebtedness. Yep, are we out of time?
We'll go one more.
All right, we'll go one more. Okay, great. But yeah, let's just keep going down the list. The last one we'll talk about is the financial contributions for the community. So we're a $500 million operation per year. We take in approximately $20 million in cash contributions to the university each year. And those are greatly appreciated, and usually those are to do something that we would say would add to the excellence of the university. A donor doesn't give you a gift just to renovate a building, or better said, to repair a sidewalk. They want to see do something extraordinary with their money. So financial contributions are important. I mean, I get the sense of where the question is coming from. I think it was reported that our contributions are down. And we'll monitor that very carefully over time. We're also putting together a new capital campaign. But I think the point that we know and you know is that there is some community leadership that we need to try to get on board, and we're working diligently every day. We had a group of 12 community leaders for breakfast in this morning, making the case for what we did, where we're going, why we should get excited about it, and why their help will be instrumental in moving the institution forward. But we know we need many more conversations to occur, and we're working diligently to try to get everyone on board. There's some misunderstandings. They're obviously out there, so we're working hard to clarify those misunderstandings. Okay.
We would ask now that anyone either going further with these questions, or if you have some new questions to raise, please write them down. We'll collect the questions throughout. One thing I'd suggest, these are great topics. The old journalist rule is questions, not topics. Please try to be specific, because we do want to drill down on some of these. And since I got the mic, I get to ask the first one.
Sure.
Following up on the mention of the grand entrance, generally...
Group of community leaders, and we're excited about that, because I think that's a real opportunity that if you think about Playhouse Square in Cleveland, to create that kind of a destination, you've arrived moment in that area in downtown Akron.
Okay. Speaking of the arts, by the way, this is just some of the questions that have come in, so we will try to get to as many as we can. Was the dance company grant written 4 years before you got to the University of Akron? And if so, why are you taking credit for something you had no involvement with?
Well, I would never do that, of course. It is certainly true that conversations with Dance Cleveland and others in terms of trying to create this National Center for Dance Choreography go back for years, not months. We were simply excited that Dance Cleveland and the university, and of course the Knight Foundation, was instrumental in providing the resources to make it happen. So they have, the real turning point with this was a $5 million gift from the Knight Foundation that enabled dreams to become a reality. And so that's what we celebrated. We celebrated the fact that we're creating, the second National Center for Choreography in the nation. on the University of Akron campus, an opportunity to take a program that has great tradition and history and to take it to the next level. We're celebrating the fact that we can partner with a great regional partner like Dance Cleveland, and we're thankful that we're blessed with being a night city and a very favored night city with a $2.3 billion endowment fund supporting things like this to take our city to the next level. So that's what we were excited about, and we hope there will be more to celebrate like that.
Okay, several of the questions have to deal with community relations and the reaction to some of the changes you made, starting with the name, which, at least according to two of the questions in here, everybody hates.
Yep.
So how do you feel about the reaction to that particular, but in general, to how the community has responded to the changes?
Well, I think the community has responded unfavorably, certainly to the rebranding initiative, and also to some of the budget cuts. So I think it's a combination of the two that have created a lot of the issues that we're now working diligently to repair and move forward with. As I've said many times, the idea behind the rebranding campaign was to say we do have this steadier linear decline in enrollment. What can we do at the college level, each of our 9 academic colleges and 2 portal colleges? What can we do at the university level with all of our 10 to 15 new university initiatives? What can we do at the branding or industry level in order to more successfully recruit in areas further from where we've historically recruited? And again, based on our research, we know that we have strong appeal in Summit County and the 5 contiguous counties. We have 2/3 of our students there. We know that we get 80% of our students from Northeast Ohio. But we also know that market is declining. And in order to maintain the scale and the size that we need to be to support all the beautiful things that we've built and all the aspirations that we have to grow stronger in the future, we've got to recruit more traditional students from greater distances, from Pittsburgh, from Chicago, from Detroit, from other areas. And we can't simply be the University of Akron, conveniently located, good value, and get you a good job when you graduate. There are too many universities around those metropolitan areas that can say that more convincingly than we can. They're more convenient. So we had to come up with a way of saying, what does the University of Akron represent that's different and better? Different and better that would cause you to skip over 4 or 5 other universities to come to Akron to experience what we do differently and better. And the idea was an education that was career-focused, that was rich in experiential opportunities like internships, co-op, service learning, that was connected to business and industry all the way back with our rich history with the rubber industry, now the polymer industry, and many other industries, that was technology infused because this generation has lived with technology. They don't engage it, something's wrong in their mind. And that this educational experience applies not only to the sciences and engineering, but to the humanities and the arts. It's not what one learns, it's how one learns that makes our educational experience different and better. And universities that fit that profile are universities like Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, and others. They are, for us in higher education, polytechnic universities. So that's the reason why we said the University of Akron, Ohio's Polytechnic University, because that's the educational experience that it represents. Now that helps us in 2 ways. One, it tells people where Akron is located. A lot of people in those cities say Akron, and they don't know Akron is in Ohio. So Ohio's Polytechnic, it tells them we're in a state that is meaningful, that determines the future of the country in many ways, presidential elections. And then number 2, it gives us an opportunity to say we're different. Now why don't you come and take a look and see for yourself how we're different. And once we get them on the campus, we leverage the beautiful buildings that we built and the chances of us enrolling the students are way up if we can get them on campus. So we're looking at this. This is, again, an attempt to strengthen, not degrade, not disrespect, to strengthen what this great university name means to get more people to come here. It's also something that's not permanent. It's a marketing tagline. It is a rebranding campaign. It will have phase 2. It will have phase 3. It will evolve. Okay? And so we're working now on what is the next stage of development of this rebranding campaign. And what it's likely to be is a more clear definition of what is unique about our educational experience. Experiential, connected, career-focused, applicable to technology and the arts. So that's probably the next phase. And I think when we get to that next phase, those who have concerns that it doesn't mean Virginia Tech, it means Start Tech, well, then we'll be able to move beyond that. But what's really important is not what we think, it's what prospective students, their parents, and high school counselors think. Because that's who we need to look at us in increasing numbers as we move forward.
You mentioned prospective students, and we've got a couple questions here regarding the LeBron James scholarships. How is that funded, and are there guarantees for either the university or the students that those scholarships will be there?
They're funded, will be funded with enough. The students don't come, our first students, I think, until 2021. And so we will have both funding sources that we have committed to Akron Public Schools already for some students who will automatically qualify for those students. So that's already a part of our financial plan. But because also we're working with the foundation to make sure that we set the eligibility requirements at a level to benefit their particular set of students that they serve, we'll decide what those eligibility are. We'll have time to fundraise and to provide the funding sources necessary to support those students. We think we've already, for example, had a bequest that we can use to support the funding for that. So our board, our university's committed. That's a great partnership. That is a win-win-win in every possible sense of the word for our College of Education, for the kids of the LeBron James Family Foundation, for the university. More people know Akron because of LeBron James than anything else in the world. And we'll partner together, hopefully, for a long, long time to benefit all of Akron.
So can those 2,300 kids take it as a pledge?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
How much, well, there are a couple of questions here regarding the Navigators program, the Trust Navigators program.
Good.
How much is that costing specifically? How far along is it? Is everything in place? And has anything been dislodged or changed in the dynamics based on the securities questions for the gentleman who runs the program?
So the program is approximately an $800,000 program. It involves the hiring, the training, and the rollout of 16 new success coaches. It means every one of our new students to the university now has a success coach. Those success coaches are in place. The program is off to a great start. The reason that we know that is we've surveyed students who they're serving, so we have the data. In fact, I think we actually have the data to hand out if anyone would like it today on the way out. But the program is off to a great start. And if you meet these success coaches, you cannot help but be inspired by their stories. And we really believe it is one of the key things that we will do to increase our persistence and student success rates going forward. We really believe that the early feedback suggests that is the case. The downside, obviously, is one of the owners or the key principles of the outsourced provider. He is alleged to have done some things with some of his other companies that have caused the state to investigate those practices. At this point, they are alleged. We've certainly had conversations with the outsourced provider. We always have contingency plans based on it turns out to be nothing or it turns out to be something. But in the end, none of that impacts really what's going on our campus. And the good news is we're off to a great start. We have great levels of optimism about the program. And for those who would love to see close hand, I'd love for you to see this and meet some of our success coaches.
All right. On the question of tenure, several questions regarding your answer on the tenure question, that it is fact that economics have forced it, but is it good education practice? And then another question is regarding administrative salaries. At the same time, you're talking about the national trend of tenure going down, administrative salaries have gone way up.
Right. Two ways to answer the question about it is going down, but is that a good thing or a bad thing? And I think what I said was if we could afford the system where every student could have a tenured faculty member, that would be a good thing. I will tell you that's probably true in most cases. It might not be necessarily true, for example, though, in all the professional schools, because in reality, what a lot of the accrediting bodies of the particular academic program and what some of the feedback from students suggest is, especially in professional programs, they enjoy a mix of academically prepared tenured faculty with a great research focus who are on the cutting edge of their field, or not only on the cutting edge, creating the cutting edge, but they also enjoy a mix of faculty who are professionally trained, experienced in the workforce, who bring real reality. In many fields, the ideal might be a mix. So therefore, in the College of Business, for example, the accrediting body, AACSB, has a standard that looks at an optimal mix of professionally trained and academically trained faculty. So it's probably a discipline by discipline determination. It is somewhat economically restrained because, while we would all love to have a Rolls Royce, we can't all afford a Rolls Royce, and therefore we have to have a value-based outcome that is both quality and cost effectiveness. The definition of value is value is quality relative to cost. So many times we have to find the highest value solution, not the ideal high-quality solution.
What about the administrative salaries?
Oh, I forgot about that. In all cases, salaries in this country are largely determined by a market phenomenon that is based on supply and demand principles. And that's true whether or not you're talking about an orthopedic surgeon in a college of medicine who might make $2 million a year, or if you're talking about a graduate student supporting the biology department who's making $10,000 a year, or if you're talking about a part-time adjunct professor who has a job that does this at night because they enjoy being in the classroom and we pay them a whopping $2,100 per course, or whether you're talking about a president or a vice president. Ultimately, there's a market, there's a supply and a demand that an equilibrium determines what that market salary is. And it's hard to get around that, frankly. So it's hard to explain why a president might make, 8 times as much as an English faculty professor. In the same way, it's hard to explain why a power-hitting third baseman makes more than someone playing for the Rubber Ducks. Okay? They're both playing the same sport, they're playing the same position, and yet one makes 1,000 times more. So it's hard to explain salaries any other way than there's simply a market or a demand that in our economy sets what a person gets paid. And then it's all based on performance. So what we try to do, however, in a world of declining resources, is to just try to be as careful as we can about the number of administrative positions that we need. When I started in higher education 25 years ago, we had an assistant director for everything, and a manager for everything, and a supervisor for everything. That doesn't exist anymore. So there are fewer administrators doing much more than what we did 25 years ago, and that's good. Some people would see that, most people would see that as progress. Okay? So the question is the overall efficiency of the system, but if you're going to get people with certain skill sets, there's a market rate that you're ultimately going to have to pay to get that person to keep that person.
Why did you not get a bonus or a raise this year?
You have to talk to the chairman of our board about that.
Okay. How would you characterize your leadership style?
My leadership, I've said many times, and I've always believed that success is 80% teamwork, 10% strategy, and 10% communication. I'm going to have to revisit that formula after the last year on that communication piece. But what it's meant to represent is the key to all successful organizations is the key to which they practice teamwork effectively. Is the team the right set of people with the right competencies, and do they work together in the right way to both set the direction of the university and then achieve it? And in my career, and I think in most of our careers, if that teamwork is right, that takes care of a lot of the rest of the issues. But that teamwork not only applies internally, especially in higher education, it applies externally. So teamwork has to exist not only within the institution, but outside the institution. And again, teamwork, like communication, is hard work. You can have it just right one day, and then it becomes dysfunctional the next. So you're constantly working. And I told the board when they hired me, they said, how long before you develop the team that you think will be there to move the institution forward? And I said, in higher education, it usually takes about 2 years to get the team right. In the corporate world, they can probably get it done in 2 months. In higher education, it usually takes about 2 years to get the team with all the right competencies working the right way to move forward.
Okay. Some questions regarding academics. The law school admissions were increased by admitting weaker students. The Honors College admissions lowered ACTs from 27 to 25. International student GPA requirements for admission were reduced from 2.5 to 2. And is this, I guess the short read is this enrollment coming at the cost of the academic standards?
Well, that would be the first time that I heard anything like that in the law school. And I'm seeing our enrollment person shake her head and doubt whether that's correct. But I don't know. I've not heard anything that would suggest that that's what we did. Instead, what I think happened is we hired a new dean. He made some changes in the law school recruitment and admission process. And we bucked a huge national trend of declining enrollments by increasing our enrollments, I think, by 26%, something like that. So that's a huge success story, and we're celebrating it as an example. If you can get the strategy, the leadership, and everyone within the college aligned, you can have some pretty dramatic turnaround results in a pretty short period of time. Now, in their case, it helps that they're small. You know, the entry class for the law school is 150 students. But it still shows what can be done if you get everything aligned in the right way. What was the other part of that?
The Honors College.
The Honors College. The only thing that I'm aware of there is traditionally, I think our admission requirement was 27 and a 3.5 GPA. And I think they also now not only do 27 and a 3.5 GPA, they also now accept 3.75 and a 25 ACT. Okay, so it's one or the above, or some combination of the two. A higher GPA, lower ACT slightly, or a higher ACT and a lower GPA. GPA is generally the better predictor to success anyway.
What about the international students?
No, I don't know anything about that. Yeah, I'm not aware of anything on the international students that we've changed.
Two forms of the same question. How are you going to compete with and collaborate with Kent State and other universities in Northeast Ohio?
Well, obviously, what we're trying to do is to expand our market to leverage our own particular historical and current strengths. Okay? So again, we're trying to extend the enrollment reach further than we've recruited before because of a unique set of educational experiences at our university. We're not trying to compete. We're trying to be the best version of ourselves and then present that to more people who want to be a part of that experience. I have nothing but good things to say about Kent State. I hope that doesn't get me in trouble. But I have great admiration for what they've been able to do. And in some ways, we need to do a better job with our satellite campuses the way they've done such an excellent job with their satellite campuses. So in addition to attracting more traditional students to the university, through all the ways that we talked about, but also we need to do a better job of increasing our enrollments of non-traditional students by virtue of not asking them to come to us, but by taking higher education to where they live through a satellite campus network or through some combination of physical and virtual network. Because again, the ideal pedagogy these days is some combination of active classroom with a great faculty member, a experiential requirement that gets you out in the field, experience the world where you can apply and get a sense of the context of this field, and then great online educational resources that supplement all of that. So that's called blended learning. And that's what we would love to see happen and be a leader in blended learning.
A couple questions about your reaction to the protests that followed some of the decisions you made, including characterizing some of them as, from the alumni, as white noise. Different questions form different ways, but basically revisiting your reaction to the criticism of your decisions. What do you think you did right? What do you think you did wrong?
Well, I'm not familiar with the specifics of that particular, but let's get to the broader question. You know, what we knew coming in is that this university had the potential to take the next positive incremental step in its development. But to do so, it had to deal with some very obvious challenges up front, namely financial enrollment. So we knew that in order to do that, there was going to be a lot of change necessary, both around the finances and around the strategic direction of the college, the university, and then again our positioning in the market. And as I mentioned before, we had a decision to make. You can try to do it over a number of years and slowly implement it. The level of noise is low. But what others have found, what I have found in my experience, is if you do that, people know you're simply going to make these changes over time. Instead of adversely impacting morale for a short period, you do it over an extended period. So we explicitly chose to be more aggressive, to move more quickly, to take whatever hit that we were going to get because of communication shortcoming. Because if you move quickly, that means you don't have as much time, as much opportunity to communicate as frequently, as often, as deep as you would if you took more time. But in the long run, while it may be hard on us personally, it would be better for the institution. And go ahead and bite the bullet, move forward, and make the change, and to get on with becoming the great public university, this national university that I think we can become. Because if we become that national university, which means attracting students from a greater distance to our university at the undergraduate level, leveraging our historical strengths in research, in polymers, and corrosion, and biomimicry, and interdisciplinary studies, and maybe new areas in data science, analytics, and information technology, if we can learn to extend to our satellite campus networks and online learning to serve the non-traditional student in a better way, if we can attract more international students, we're not even attracting our fair share, more international students to our institution, if we can compete nationally in a select number of important sports, soccer, where we're already going to win another national championship, I believe. In basketball, we're on the precipice of being, I think, a nationally respectable program, especially being Arkansas tonight. And then we got more work to do with football. But, our society and culture, has rallied around, and we've made some investments there that we need to see if they can pay off over the time. Responsible and a socially responsible way, we can become that national university that reverses the enrollment decline, pushes it at a higher level. If we do that, that's economic development for Akron and the region. And the region needs this university to grow and to be a driver of economic growth. This university, this city and region doesn't need this institution to get smaller. It needs it to grow in size and significance.
Who should you have had at the table when you were planning these cuts who could have warned you of problems that you then had to reverse course on down the road?
Well, we had members, we had the leadership of the Faculty Senate, we had leadership of the faculty union, we had leadership of the department chairs, we had regular conversations with the deans and the associate deans, we had regular and deep conversations with our board of trustees. We had regular, deep conversations with select members of the community. So, at the same time, some have said we've not been transparent. I've got others that said we're way too transparent. We try to err on the side of transparency and inclusion. And so, in the end, you would always love to include more. But what you find in all of these processes is that there is a deadline. There is a time when a decision must be made. There's a time when a budget must be adopted. The fiscal year begins July 1. You got to make certain decisions. So you're always acting with imperfect information and imperfect input. And as I said in one of those major speeches, you cannot have progress without making mistakes. No one has ever been able to do that. Okay? In science, in entrepreneurship, in politics, in military operations, no one has ever been able to make progress without making mistakes. None of us in our lives have been able to grow as an individual without having made mistakes. Okay? And so that is an inevitable part of progress. The only people that make mistakes are those who are not trying to accomplish anything. The only way not to make a mistake. And this institution cannot remain status quo. It has to change. Not only because of the necessity of that, but because of the opportunity of that for the city and region.
One of the things in reversing course, you at one point had higher fees for upperclassmen. That was abandoned. You said, though, that that would be revisited. Where does that stand now?
Yeah, because when we were trying to develop a plan that addressed cumulatively a $60 million restructuring of our economic model, it was $20 million of operating expenses, $30 million of capital reinvestment, and $10 million of a strategic initiative pull for new initiatives. We tried to envision a plan that would do that. The best we could come up with was $40 million of expense reductions, $10 million of fee increases, and $10 million, frankly, of profitable enrollment growth. And we just couldn't find it any other way, which is why it became a 3-year plan. You typically need 2 to 3 years for profitable enrollment growth to materialize. Okay? But in that plan included that $10 million of price increases. And it was a net price increase, meaning there were some elements of our educational experience where we would lower the price for market reasons and for social reasons at the general education level. But there were other elements of our educational experience where we had never covered the high cost that you must employ to develop a high-value educational program, namely engineering and the performing arts. So our initial solution was to apply broadly in a more progressive way rather than a particular program standpoint, an upper division program fee. And historically, the state has respected a board of trustees' ability to determine graduate tuition and non-general fees. Okay? But the state continues to control the setting of undergraduate tuition and general fees. Okay? We tried to design this fee such that it would qualify for a non-general fee, and the state, for whatever reason, determined that what we had designed fell into the category of a general fee. So we had to back up on the plans because then it fell in their purview, and then we're now working with students to redesign what we need to do at the fee level, put it back into the purview of our board of trustees so that we can get our overall economic model on solid foundation and moving forward.
A couple more specific questions from very different perspectives, and then I'd ask a general one. The university's multicultural center was eliminated. Why?
Well, it wasn't eliminated, and we've got a hint for anyone for whom this topic is really important and you'd like to get a clear view. I can't help it. I got PowerPoint slides for you on the way out. Okay? What we have for you is our diversity strategic plan. It will give you the background information of all the structure that we have in place to promote diversity, and it will give you a sense of the progress that we've made in the last year and a half in achieving diversity, not only in access, but in student success. Now, are we declaring victory? You never declare victory on this. This, like everything else that is important in life, is something that you're continuously investing in, trying to improve day after day, getting better. You see that positive trend line. And so in that plan are all the things that we're doing trying to get better each day. But we still have a staff multicultural center. We still have a staff Office of Multicultural Development. We still have a staff diversity, inclusion, and excellence. We still have TRIO programs. We still have peer mentoring programs. We have added success coaches that we believe will also move the numbers. We have a great number of leaders and board members. 3 of our board of trustees are African American. This is important to all of us. So, and I believe we're making great progress, and the handout for you on the way out is kind of a quick look at that.
Okay. Does the university have strategies to attract hundreds of past students who have dropped out of the school?
Yeah, our enrollment leader has led an effort to try to get the database of those who have earned credit but not earned a degree, and made special efforts to reach out to that population to invite them back. So I guess that's something that we have done.
To invite them back out?
To come back and to renew their higher education experience, to re-enroll and move forward.
Okay. With Akron General not part of the 2016 insurance plan, or at least it looking that way, does that also mean that Cleveland Clinic will no longer be part of the employees plan?
I would say that story is still being written and nothing should be assumed at this day. I would also add, though, that I have had to recuse myself since my wife is an executive officer of one of the healthcare systems in town. So this is being led by a member of our board and our chief financial officer working to resolve this issue.
What is the single most important thing you can do now to better relations with the community, the faculty, and the students?
I've just been advised that I just need to spend more time with those groups. And I look forward to do that, and we are doing that. I had a very difficult decision to make my first year, because what most presidents do is just kind of take the year and meet people. But we knew that the challenges were such that we couldn't get this institution to move forward in the way that it could and should by simply me taking a year off to get to know folks, which would have been really nice. It would have made that honeymoon last a lot longer. But we knew that, and I talked to the board about that. So when you look back on my first year, it was probably 25% external and 75% internal. And again, I rationalized that because we couldn't get going until the team was formed, the strategies were in place, the strategies were resourced, and the financial issues were resolved that gave us that firm footing to move forward. But on the other hand, we paid a huge price for that, because that meant there were relationships that didn't get established that would have helped when some of the changes were made. Now, normally, in any given year, a president should minimally spend 50% of their time externally: donors, alumni, community relations, governmental relations, etc. Forming partnerships, creating opportunities, helping create opportunities for colleges and programs. And that's a minimum. So we are trying to, at a minimum, get to that level in my second year. And then those who have been in place or enjoy a very stable presidency. I just visited with a guy that's been president of Lorain County Community College for 29 years. And he's, as president for that same institution, he's retiring next year. But I asked him, when in that 29 years were you able to shift from being an internal president to more of an external president? He said in year 10. Okay? Because when he came is when the steel industry exploded and evaporated in Lorain County. So he dealt with trying to restructure the community college in order to serve a huge emergency need. Now, I can't take 10 years to do that. So we're trying to get to that as soon as possible. But again, we have a little more work to do with the team. We have a large number of people still retiring. I still have 6 to 8 key positions to hire in the next 6 to 9 months. But once that team is in place, plans, budget, then it'll allow me to do what the president needs to do.
And I guess this sums up all the rest. 5 to 3 year plan. How are you going to know if you've been successful?
Well, we'll know that we're successful if we don't put the university at risk financially, if we have an economic model that remains in a state of equilibrium. I was taught a long time ago, if your outgo exceeds your income, the upkeep will be your downfall. So you cannot have an economic model that you cannot sustain. And you can have a sustainable economic model in good times and bad times. It's just a matter of having the discipline to do that. So that's the first order. Have a sustainable economic model that we can move forward with. The second thing is that we can reverse the enrollment decline. I think we have to do that. We have no choice to do that given our level of debt and the assets that we have. We have to employ strategies to do that. And I'm very optimistic that we'll be able to do that. But those are going to be the two obvious and primary metrics. The other metrics is if we keep getting feedback from employers and students that their educational experience gave them what they needed to be successful in the marketplace. And if our researchers are coming out and offering technologies and opportunities that help promote the industry of Northeast Ohio. Because there's a lot of synergy between business, government, non-profit sector, and the higher education sector. And if we can create that synergy, it creates kind of a win-win for everyone.
What about the potential for no confidence vote?
No confidence votes, sadly, are becoming more and more common. Someone always left a article from Inside Higher Ed on my desk in the last couple of days, assuming they were trying to cheer me up a little bit, by essentially saying these are expressions of dissatisfaction with change within higher education. And they're just kind of a part of the landscape. I think in the end, like everything in life, you have to view it as an opportunity for better cooperation, an opportunity to say, what does teamwork look like? What are the root disagreements? And I think at the root of this is this tenured faculty issue. And so that's an opportunity to say we need to work on those and see if we can get to a place where we practice shared governance in a way that moves the institution forward and focuses primarily on what's best for students and the publics that we serve.
Okay. Thank you all, and thank you, Dr. Scarborough. Personally, I've been doing this for, Bruce, about 5 years now. I never recall the volume of questions that came this time. So really, I think you all need to give yourselves a hand of applause as well for taking this very seriously.